Hey everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. It is Friday and I am getting ready to take off on an Airstream trip just for the weekend until Monday, and I've got some adventures and some exploring planned. So I've got to get this thing packed up and ready to go. That is why I have been working so hard to get all of my seedlings in the ground in spite of this crazy heat we've been having. Definitely not a great time to be getting seedlings outside. I have been covering all of them with shade cloth or with burlap to try to shelter them and harden them off in place just to get them in the ground and help the transition from inside to outside to be a little bit easier. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be going to Ohio because I'm selling my mom's house. She passed away last summer, so we are going to be selling that, and I have to get the house cleaned out. So all of these different little trips coming up have made it necessary for me to work ahead and not be patient and wait until after the heat passes, which looks like it's going to be this weekend. And since it's going to only be in the mid 80s, I thought it would be the perfect time just to remind you of all the little jobs that you can be doing in your garden right now just to stay on track in spite of the heat. So let's go through those, even though I won't be doing those in my garden. I did them last weekend when it was so hot, but maybe you can get those done this weekend and still get a great productive summer garden. So let's go. First, cover your fruit trees. All of the fruit trees have pretty much finished flowering for me and probably for you too. So definitely make sure that you take the time to protect them. So I like using this, it's like a mesh. People ask me all the time about this, and it's just like a mesh. It's a little bit delicate. You have to be careful when you put it over top of the tree because it can snag. As a matter of fact, here's a little, I don't know if you can see that on the camera. But there's a little snag right there, little hole. But for the most part, if you're careful, I've been using this for a couple seasons and it's fine. But can you see my little mulberries in there, y'all? Those are definitely in need of protection from the birds because they are going to be eating those mulberries ahead of me. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I've got this on. I've also got this cage around it because we have deer and javelina here where I am, but I just clipped it to this cage. Oh, look what I see. That is a little critter there. I think that's an assassin bug. I'm gonna check. Bye. Anyway, I have it clipped here just to make sure that this thing doesn't blow off first of all, and for another, I don't want birds sneaking in. So that's my dwarf mulberry tree. I just fished a few of these out. Look how tiny these are. These are only about a third of the size of a normal mulberry. Usually they're a lot longer berry than this, but they're still really good. I see there are probably a dozen or so in there ready to pick, so I'm gonna get those. I may or may not share them. But then you can see over here that I've also got a peach tree that I have put that net over top of too, which was actually pretty tricky. Here's my little fruit corner. TJ got me a couple of blackberries, just bare root blackberries, so I've got those underneath there. I've got my Nanking cherries. I also planted another Nanking cherry just to complete the trio. That one, it looks like the little cover has blown off of it. I just used an old piece of shade cloth there, but that was the one that actually I accidentally butchered with the weed whacker last year, so I had to replace it. And then probably hard for you to see back in the corner, I've got a couple of gooseberries to try. And I know I just talked about this peach tree, but it's got so many little peaches in it, y'all. I'm so excited about that. I know that it's hard to believe that these will be ripe probably by the end of May, but they will. So only another 6 weeks or so, and I'm really excited. And the apples are doing their thing, also covered. And you can see I need to thin some of the fruit, maybe. I may just be a rebel and not do it and see what happens. Usually you get better quality, bigger fruits if you thin them, but sometimes I don't. So normally they say 1 apple per cluster, and every 6 inches for fruits on your other like stone fruits and things. But yeah, it's looking really good. Look at all those pomegranate blooms, y'all. I think it's going to be a really nice pomegranate season. All of the pomegranates, I have 6 trees and they all have blooms on them, including this one. Let's see if I can get this in focus. This is my little Josefina, and she has not produced fruit yet. So she's a relatively new tree. I think this might be the second season for it. There used to be a mesquite tree just across the wall. It was shading a little bit. So we removed that last fall. It was just, a bird poo mesquite, I guess you could say. It was not planned. It was growing way too close to the wall, and it was just a little skinny thing. So we removed it before it caused trouble with the wall back here. But yeah, it looks like this little one is going to be producing a fruit or two. So I'm really excited to try that one. The second job I want to talk about is compost. Now is the time, as you're planting all of those hungry plants for summer, to add compost in one form or another. I've been working so hard over the last few weeks trying to spread this compost out. I bought a lot, 12 cubic yards, and so that was probably a lot more than I needed. That is an understatement. But I'm just going to use what I need, and then I'm going to cover the rest with a tarp just to keep it from drying out. I'll probably dampen it every now and then, every week or so, just because dry soil is dead soil, and I don't want any of the nice little microbes in there to perish from dehydration. So I'll probably do that, but I want to show you a few little tips for how I make my compost go further, because this stuff was not cheap. If you're working on a really small budget, or you just want to have your compost stretch further, there are a couple little things that I will do rather than just spreading it over the entire bed. Usually the advice for gardeners is to put 2 or 3 inches over the top of your garden beds every season, but that can get pricey if you're on a smaller budget. And if you want to conserve, there are a couple of things that I will do just to keep that compost going a little bit further. So I want to talk about that next. It seems that by the end of my video, I always end up in the shade here next to this brick wall. It's kind of nestled between my house and my shed, and it is the only space around 10 o'clock in the morning that is not just blasting in sunshine. And that's not a bad thing for having a garden, but it kind of is a difficult thing when you're trying to make a video. But here we are, and I want to talk about how you can make your compost go further. Whether you're buying a load, a bulk load like I did, or you're buying them in bags, it can be very pricey. I buy mine from tanks, and I have it delivered because I need a lot of it, and I live a little bit further from Tucson, so it would take a lot of trips and a lot of bags to be able to get it all out here to my garden. So it's more cost effective, even with the delivery charge, of having them just bring it. And that's why I have a lot of it too. I will order a huge bulk delivery, and then I will use part of it this year and part of it next year. And that's why I cover it and keep it moist too, just to make sure that it's still really good and it's not drying out. But if you want to just do it by the bag, or maybe get a much smaller delivery, you could do that. But the way that I like to make it go further, if I'm not going to be topping the entire bed, is that I will just fill a wheelbarrow full of that compost. I will bring it over to the bed that I'm working in, and I will dig my hole for my seedling, and I will put a little handful of worm castings in that hole, and then I will put the seedling in, and then I will add the compost right directly to the planting hole into the seedling root base. And then I will cover it up with the rest of the soil. And that way I am just spot amending rather than doing the entire bed. And that works really, really well. And you're still amending your soil, but you're doing it at a more concentrated, more intentional way. And I think that that really cuts down on how much compost that I use. I will usually only order compost every 2 years, and I still actually had a little bit left from 2 years ago that I used first, and now I am breaking into the new pile. So if you want to try doing that to make your compost go a little further, you are really adding a lot of concentrated nutrients and organic matter, and that's going to build organic structure and have nutrients available for those new seedlings right away without having to spread it over the entire bed. So as you are planting your seedlings out, just make sure that you are adding nutrition to the soil. So if you do it once a year, I think that that is adequate. I like to add it in the spring when I know that I'm going to be gearing up for a lot of hungry crops. And so that way it can last me through to the next spring too. Like a lot of the leafy greens and things just aren't that hungry. Lettuces and spinach and all kinds of things like that just aren't that hungry. So I find that doing it once a year is a lot better, and it's just as effective as doing it every time you plant. I think I picked the worst time in the morning. It is about 9:30 in the morning, and the sun is so intense. So hopefully this video isn't too terrible when it comes to lighting, but we're just gonna power through it here. I wanna show you my campground that I've got. Yeah, those are all of my little canopies that I have put over top of all of the seedlings that I have planted from inside that I started from seed, and I've put them outside in preparation for a very productive summer. And like I told you, the next 2-3 weeks are going to be a bit chaotic, so I just needed to make sure I got them in the ground so that they were not in their seed trays too long or just getting out way too late to be productive. So to combat the heat, I have just been hardening them off in place using burlap as I'm trailing as a replacement for some of that plastic-based shade cloth, which has been shedding plastic particles all over my soil. And so far it's actually working really, really well. I've been very pleased with it. But if you didn't know, as long as you can provide shade in the form of some kind of shade cloth, as well as adequate water while your seedlings are getting established, a lot of times you can cheat and just harden them off right in place, plant them, you know, in the bed or in the container that you're using, and then just provide shelter and a little extra TLC, and usually it works just fine. So that is the third job that you really should be doing this weekend, and that is getting your seedlings out and also covering them with shade cloth of some form and giving them some extra water until they get established. So now is the time. If you've been holding off because of the heat or just other time constraints, you got to get all of those warm season things in your garden. So the eggplants and the peppers and the tomatoes, tomatillos, all of those sorts of things. And of course, there are tons and tons of seeds that you can sow directly in the garden right now. And I've got a video on that. I will link it below for what you can be setting out in the form of seedlings, as well as what you can be setting out or planting in the form of seeds. So check those out if you'd like to. They will be linked in the description box below. All right, I think we are on job number 4, and that is water your compost. So a lot of people struggle to make compost. They say that their compost pile pretty much just sits there and just is dry and it doesn't break down. And in the desert, we've got the heat, which is great for breaking down compost, but we don't have the water. But it is too dry here in the desert to adequately break down food scraps or garden waste into that rich soil that you're hoping for, because it's just too dry. So you have to water your compost. So I've got a 3-bin compost system right here. And what I like to do is once a week I will come out either with my watering can or with my garden hose, and I will give it a nice little drink just to wet it down. You don't want it like dripping wet or having pooling water, but you just want to add in some of that moisture. So we've got the heat portion, but we need the moisture, and we've got to add that. Eventually I will probably take a little irrigation line and run it from my fig tree that's right next to this compost pile and put it over here onto the compost so that it automatically gets watered every time my trees get watered. But for now I've been having to do it manually because I hate irrigation and I am always procrastinating on adding irrigation lines. So I've got my fig tree right here, all of my cages that I've got stored here, and then right next to it is my 3-bin compost system. And so what I like to do is just work from one side to the other. So this first one is the oldest one, and so that one is just cooking now. And then the next oldest is the middle one, and the one that I'm currently adding to is the one at the very back. And so that one is actively being layered and built right now. I really love this little bin system. I got it from Gardener's Supply probably 3 years ago, and it's worked really well. It's got like little doors on the front here so that you can just open up the front of it when you're ready to scoop out, which is a lot easier than going in through the top. The other thing I like is that it's got this wire cover on the top. Each one opens individually, but that's really nice because it keeps some of the critters out. I couldn't resist from stopping here, making a little pit stop, and showing you this sunflower. It is so beautiful. I'm going to talk to you while I do the next job. I think this is number 5, and that is keep your hummingbird feeders filled with fresh sugar water. So I like to make my own sugar water. It is kind of expensive to just buy the pre-made red stuff, that you can find in the stores. And honestly, it couldn't be easier. It will do a ratio of 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. So if you're making 1 cup of sugar water, you do 1 cup of water and 1/4 cup of just plain granulated sugar. And I like to warm up my water a bit because it helps the sugar dissolve much better. And then what I do is I just have this jar in my fridge, because that is the other tip I've got, and that is making sure that you keep your sugar water fresh. In this heat, that sugar is going to start to ferment. It'll get cloudy and kind of stinky really soon, like just within 3 or 4 days. So what I like to do is fill my hummingbird feeders up just a couple times a week like that. So every 3 or 4 days I will pre-mix the jar of sugar water, and then I will just fill a little bit up at a time. Rather than filling up the entire feeder, I will just provide a little bit at a time. And as long as I can stay on top of filling those feeders, it is a lot better for the hummingbirds because they get fresh sugar water rather than fermented sugar. Maybe it's like sugar wine, I'm not sure, or sugar beer. But either way, I'm going to be filling this up. I love this little feeder. This is a little glass feeder. It was made in Mexico. The tag when I bought it said that it was handmade. It's got these cute little red flowers on it, and it's got like the little top. How cute is that, y'all? And it goes into this little holder here. And I will just fill this thing up, and I'll go around and fill all of the hummingbird feeders up there in my yard. And I do that. I've got some evenly spaced all throughout because they fight, and so I like to spread it out and give them quite a few options. And I have so many hummingbirds right now, and hummingbirds will come visit your flowers, and I'm sure they do a bit of pollination as they do, and they eat a ton of bugs in my garden. I even see them hanging out over top of my compost bin sometimes if there are gnats or fruit flies over there, and they will just be hunting all of those little flies, which is really kind of cute. So I really like to try to take care of my hummingbirds. I've got a video that I am planning in the next couple of weeks, and it's all about the journey of a hummingbird. So I filmed a hummingbird from the point that it was making its very first part of its nest, to laying its eggs, to sitting on those eggs, hatching the chicks, feeding the chicks, and then I even captured the chick flying out of the nest, the very last chick, for the last time. So it was really fun to make. I want to talk about some of the facts of hummingbirds and how we can support them. And this is just a little spoiler, providing fresh, nice sugar water. So I have a lot of flowers and a lot of flowering trees in my yard, but even still, I like to try to provide additional support for them because I want them here in my garden. And they have such a hard time with habitat loss and with just a lack of rainfall and things. The desert feeds its creatures very well. There's usually something blooming, but even still, humans and the effect that we've had on the environment and the landscape has been tough for a lot of creatures, and hummingbirds are one of those. So I've got this filled. I'm going to put this here. So that is job number 5. Fill your bird baths, fill your hummingbird feeders, and make sure that your bird feeders are filled if you do things like that in your garden. So whenever I'm going to be going away for a weekend or for a week, I will always try to make sure that I do that before I go. I've also got one here next to my little petunia. I have a whole video that I've been working on getting this shed finally finished. So I started taking video footage of this late last fall when we started the project. It took us a little while. So TJ did a lot of work on this thing. It was pretty poorly built, but it had at least a respectable frame and a concrete floor, so we decided to keep it, and it actually didn't leak. So we tore out a bunch of things, replaced it, kind of rebuilt what was there, and then I have finally gotten this thing painted. But I'm not going to show you the whole thing yet, but I got this really beautiful little petunia that is hanging on the corner of the shed, and I've also got some of these little bird feeders, these hummingbird feeders, and this is copper, and it's got like a little cup with a hole in it. I got these at the Heirloom Farmers Market in Tucson at the Rito Park, and this has been so nice. I've got several of them. Since it's so small, you definitely have to fill it up way more often, but I really love being able to just hang these around in my trees or near my flowering baskets or whatever. And it's been so fun to sit here in my courtyard and watch the hummingbirds come to this one over and over again. What's really crazy is you would think that the ants would not be able to find this, but there are ants in this thing. So I'm gonna go rinse this thing out, clean it really well. I have no idea how the ants were able to navigate all the way up the shed and down this copper wire, but they are acrobats. So I'm gonna rinse this out, fill it up, and then go fill up the other ones. Y'all are getting a little sneak peek of my shed. Isn't she cute? I just love the red window, and the door might be red too, but you will have to wait for that video in a couple of weeks. So I think that that pretty much sums up exactly what you should be doing in your garden right now. I will add a list in the description box below so that you can kind of check those off, all of those different tasks and jobs in your own garden, just to keep you on track. I need to get busy packing. I have been out here yakking for way too long, so we've got to get our Airstream loaded up. And we are going to some cool little spots, some fun spots, so I will probably be sharing that as always on my Instagram stories if you want to check it out over there. I will also probably do a couple of shorts that I will post here on YouTube, and I may even add a couple of pictures or things like that into my posts here on YouTube. So if you'd like to follow along, let me know. I never know if it's not gardening related if you're really that interested in seeing it, but if you are, let me know and I will try to share some of that with you. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.